Re-Zero, Volume 7, Chapter 3, C. The Battle of the White Whale. Loud laughter echoed across the leafless highway. Discordant sounds trickled from the small mouths opened across the giant body of the white whale as it swam leisurely in the sky. When it roared from its proper mouth, it came with such destruction that it made the earth shudder. The sound given off by many mouths out of sync was twisted and repulsive, like being clawed by the very wind. The unpleasant feeling was not a blow to the eardrums, but rather like having one's brain poked at by slender needles. With that ghoulish change in the white whale, Subaru sensed that the tide had turned. They'd pounded that immense preemptive strike into it with the expeditionary force from Wilhelm on down, adding their own concentrated attacks. The damage inflicted on the white whale was by no means minimal. After all, the combined firepower was enough to kill Subaru 100 times over. If comparing with other demon beasts, it was an attack power sufficient to wipe out an entire Regarum pack 10 times over. The beast, bathed in all that, had taken enough damage to lose one eye. If it was not enough to settle the battle, Subaru had hoped it would at least result in bringing the beast down to earth, but... Crap! The mist! Continuing to raise a shrill cry, the white whale spread mist from its countless mouths. The mist spread in a wide range across the highway, its encroachment progressing as it fell thickly from the sky. Subaru's field of vision became progressively wider, and the effect of the night repel magic crystal waned. The demon beast of mist had come into its own. With visibility worsening, the expeditionary force was unable to maintain tight cohesion over the mist-shrouded plains. Moreover, didn't it look like even the white whale was melting into the mist, vanishing from sight? "You're kidding me. Subaru, please entrust me with your life." Rem leaned forward and shouted to Subaru, shaken by the vanishing of the white whale. Subaru responded to her shout by deepening his arm's embrace of Rem's body. Obeying Rem's snap of the reins, the land dragon whirled around, splitting the ground as it began to sprint. Ferris, beside them until just earlier, similarly turned the head of his land dragon toward the interior of mist. With the white whale entering a state of combat, the counterattack would grow desperate. Naturally, casualties could not be avoided. That being the case, this was where his duty lay as he was called the Blue Knight, the greatest of healers. Yet, in spite of that, "All hands, retreat!" A bellow from inside the mist resounded, halting them before they leaped into the sea of white. It was Crucia's voice they heard. "What is she doing?" was the look on the face Subaru lifted up, but the next moment... Whoa! Subaru's body was shaken by the centrifugal force as the land dragon veered left in a spur-of-the-moment decision. In front, Varys' land dragon was making its own emergency right turn, resulting in them going separate ways. And white came violently surging from the corners of Subaru's tilted vision. "Hey now, hold on!" The middle of the path that had opened up by their splitting apart was blown away in a single gust of very dense mist. The force of the tall wave of mist shooting through would have surely swallowed up the land dragons had they invaded even a second slower. Without having seen the real thing in action, one might laugh it off as making a big deal about mere mist. But no one, seeing the nature of that mist up close with their own eyes, would ever dismiss it so lightly. The surface of the plains, grazed by the mist, was gouged as if melted away, with the highway surface vanishing all the way down to the foundation. A human body fully bathed in that mist, would invariably share the same fate. If we got hit by that, Subaru thought. He'd fully taken to heart the briefing beforehand concerning the threat of the white whale's mist, but the real thing was beyond even his expectations. So this is the serious mist. The white whale, called the demon beast of mist, had mist that broadly fell into two varieties. The first was the wide area mist it scattered to expand its own swimming area, such as what it had used to cover the highway. And the second was the annihilating mist, which had erased a good chunk of the ground before his eyes just then. He hadn't seen the means of attack until then, but it was the latter, the annihilating mist, that wrought destruction. And though a single glance was sufficient to understand its destructive power, there was even more to it than that. Namely, yeah! In a vigorous flash, a gallant voice cut through the mist as something suddenly sliced open the white scene before Subaru's eyes. It was a land dragon with Krush on its back that leaped out of the mist. She'd probably used a super long-range, invisible slicing attack to disperse the mist and secure her vision. Krush briskly wiped off the sweat on her brow, panting atop the land dragon. Using her as a marker at the center of the cleared mist, the scattered elements of the expeditionary force began to hastily regroup. Krush looked across her subordinates from each of the assembled squads and asked, "How many people were hit?" "Our squad had 12 people. We're 3 short." "Who are you missing?" "We don't know." Faced with Krush's impatience, the man in his prime seemed to wring out his reply as he shook his head. Under normal circumstances, such an exchange would be incomprehensible. The squad leader, cognizant of the number of people in his squad, was reporting that he could not remember the names of the lost members. Surely such a crazy thing was not possible, yet. "We have 14 and have lost 1. 2 men in my squad, similarly unclear. 6 men. I'm very sorry. Our position was deep, and we were unable to avoid the mist." Similar reports came in one after another, with none able to remember the names of their vanished comrades. It was that bizarre circumstance that was the true menace of the white whale's mist. The annihilating mist. In shock, Subaru's molars clattered as the murmur came running up from his throat. Those literally annihilated by the mist, and even their memories of their existence erased from the world. Even if proof remained of those erased, no memories of their existence remained. And that was the true meaning behind Krush organizing the expeditionary force in squads of 15 men each. If the squads were to lose men due to the mist, they would be unable to even discern who had been hit. Even so, by having a set number in each squad, they could at least grasp the fact that they had lost people. Subaru knew that eerie fear for himself, for he had tasted it the previous go-around. For Otto, the traveling merchant accompanying him on the highway, the existence of a fellow merchant fallen prey to the white whale, and the existence of Rem, who stayed behind to slow the white whale down, had been completely consigned to oblivion. At the time, Subaru was of the thought that Otto had forgotten those inconvenient memories out of fear, but it made more sense that he was under the effect of the white whale's mist. All memory of his fellow merchant and Rem was erased from that world, just like when, back at the mansion, even Rem's older twin sister, Ram, had forgotten her. Now the same thing had happened again, yet, even in spite of that, I'm the only one who remembers. In a daze, Subaru voiced the undeniable fact. Just like in the last go-around, when Subaru never forgot the erased merchant, Rem, sacrificing himself so that Subaru could escape. He alone remembered. Two of the squad leaders, gathered under Krush, had become different people. Bathed by the annihilating mist, the original squad leaders had been erased. Everyone accepted the next in line as the squad leaders in their place, with no one noticing the sudden change in rank. Faced with that abnormality, Subaru knew that the witch and the white whale really were cut from the same cloth. Subaru did not escape, continuing to remember the things everyone else had forgotten. Surely, this was not unrelated to return by death, a trait possessed by Subaru alone. Krush looked over the faces of the expeditionary force and cut the conversation short. Now that it is submerged into the mist, we cannot know from whence it attacks. Crowding together is a poor plan. We shall disperse and employ mana repulsion crystals. Seeing everyone nod at the other in his peripheral vision, Subaru's eyes widened when he realized he didn't see Wilhelm or Ricardo among them. Surely even those two were not erased by the mist. So have you returned, Wilhelm? But Subaru's nervousness was belied by a figure's timely return from the mist. Having sliced through the dense fog, the sword devil seemed ghastly. His entire body bathed in blood. Wilhelm wiped off his blood-sullied swords, tersely smearing the blood from his cheeks as an afterthought. I ran too far ahead. Our losses? Wilhelm asked. A total of 21. Essentially, one squad was annihilated. We can no longer hope even to properly honor the memory of the fallen. Being erased by the mist literally meant one's existence was wiped clean, with no traces left of them, even in people's memories. It was a complete blank where they had once existed in the world. Subaru wondered if the bonds and feelings, even love, that had been so certain until then, vanished someplace. When he looked closer, Subaru saw a pack of Ligers behind Wilhelm, and among them were Ricardo, straddling his extra-large Liger, and the two lieutenants. Apparently, just like Wilhelm, those fighting right up against the white whale had endured minimal damage. The mist coming out makes this rough. Mana repulsion crystals are scarce, and we've less than I'd like. If we use them in the wrong place, we're done. If we strike it with one more concentrated attack, it shall surely fall to the ground. Having lost sight of it, this is the right time to employ them, averting a surprise attack among other things. Objections? When everyone endorsed Krush's judgment, her gaze turned to the support unit under Ferris's command. Ferris, launch anti-magic crystals from the magic crystal cannons, twice only. We must employ them with care. Preparations are already complete. Any time, at your command. When Ferris tapped his chest, Krush drew in her chin, looking over everyone before the battle recommenced. From here on is the real battle. The response remaining in your own hands shall prove that our attacks are effective upon the white whale. Certainly, our opponent is mighty and unfathomable. Worst case, there may be none who shall remember our deaths. However, Krush, able to launch cutting blows with her bare hand, drew from her hip the treasured sword of the House of Karsten, a sword no doubt long bereft of use, and raised it to the sky, declaring in a loud voice, For the sake of the dead with no name left on their tombstones, for the sake of the weak who would be menaced by the mist in the world ahead, we shall slay it, whatever it takes. Come with me! Every manner of weapon was raised to the sky, everyone shouting in exultation as one. The mist shuddered from the incredible surge of morale, ferociously setting their dampened fighting spirit to light. Launch the anti-magic crystal! At Krush's order, the individuals under Ferris' command fired magic crystal cannons in a salvo. The next moment, with a great roar, the magic crystals soared high into the misty sky when the mist is clearing. The glow of the magic crystals shattering in the heavens erased the white mist obstructing their sight all at once. Properly speaking, all the mist covering the four corners of the plains had not been swept away. In the end, all that had changed was the density of that mist, which had thinned so that it was no longer difficult to maintain a clear view. But one could call even that result sufficient. The white whale's mist was apparently a calamity wrought from the vast mana it possessed. In other words, the white whale scattered its mana in the direction of its choosing, and this became the mist visible to others. The anti-magic crystals, by rights, crystals with the effect of forcing the mana in an area back into a colorless state, thus neutralizing it, had used their power to nullify the mana of the mist, blowing it away. It was a dangerous gamble, for if the anti-magic crystals worked too well, it would also diminish the strength of their own magic attacks. But it seemed there was no need for concern, so long as they could see the remnants of the mist. Not enough to clear away all the mist, huh? In turn, there is no effect on our own magic. I, too, am in peak condition. Rem gave a little nod, but it was the glow of the horn on her forehead that offered the real answer. The fact that it sensed mana swirling around the area and had begun building Rem's magical energy once more was the proof. All right, I can't get cold feet now. I've come too far to be useless now. It's time for us to take the stage. Yes, let's go. Rem handled the land dragon's reins, and its neigh matched the bounce of Subaru's rump. He grabbed hold of Rem's hips atop the dashing land dragon, searching for the sight of the white whale in the thin mist above their heads. With Crush at the head, the expeditionary force set out as well. Dispersing its various parts searched for the white whale. With the battle resuming at possibly any moment, Subaru felt the tension trying his throat out in a hurry. No one saw the white whale come out yet. It felt like before the start of the battle, when they waited for the white whale to appear in the night sky, when... mist. Suddenly, a bad premonition popped up in the back of Subaru's mind. He had no special kind of proof of it. They were still able to use magic within the effect of the anti-magic crystals. When he remembered the various things spoken before the operation and his experience meeting the white whale on the previous go-around, that anxiety suddenly bubbled to the surface. There were remnants of widely scattered mist in the atmosphere. The white whale had expanded its own turf and obstructed their fields of vision, the oldest trick in the Demon Beast of Mist's book. That was all the prior information he had, but could he really say that was the only reason he was afraid? But before the doubt in his head could take form, the squeaking chorus that echoed across the slightly misty Livis highway came quieter. What the hell was that? A high-pitched echo was like a woman's shriek, instilling a sense of disgust that made Subaru want to cover his ears. It was both roar and laughter, yet repulsive on a whole other level, traversing the mist to mock them across the plains. Just now. Subaru tried to put the question into words when he noticed it. That the mist coiled around his entire body seemed to melt into him, as if trying to permeate his flesh. And then... The first shift came in the mounted dragon unit running alongside. Subaru's shoulders jumped at the strange noises, sounding nothing like ones coming from sane human beings. Guessing that something had changed, he looked over to see cavalrymen racing beside him, tumbling from the land dragons one after another. "Hey, what's wrong?" Following the shouting Subaru's intentions, his own land dragon did a U-turn and headed toward them. He passed between the land dragons, confused by the loss of their riders, and called out to the tumbled men. "You all right? Falling from a horse can get you hurt pretty Subaru, concerned about such injuries, unwittingly let his voice die off midway. Having fallen from the land dragons, the knights were writhing around, but their state was far more precarious than mere physical wounds. Ah! The strange voices they raised were not like those of human beings. They were closer to the noises of beasts. One man was frothing at the mouth, convulsing on the ground with his eyes rolled up. Another man let out a moan as he desperately scratched his own arms. Yet another clenched down on his molars until they broke, pounding his head against the ground. There was no single set of symptoms, but even so, he knew. It was madness, using the mist as a medium to spread. The voice just now directly affected their minds through the mist. It is like mana poisoning, but this is terrible. With Subaru restraining his voice, Rem put a hand to her forehead, making an anguished face as she replied. Mana poisoning? So this really isn't normal mist after all. Judging from Rem's state and the feel of the mist coiled around his body, Subaru realized that this was the real function of the mist. The wide area mist was an unavoidable trap, inflicting abnormal status on the beings within its broad reach. The vastness of the effect and the damage it inflicted was in plain sight. Subaru didn't think the effects of the mist were limited to the squads around him and Rem either. In fact, even as far as his eyes could see, he saw multiple squads stopped in their tracks, trying to deal with the abnormal state of their allies. So some people are resistant to the mist, and some aren't. I don't feel a thing. I only feel a little from my head. I am calm. Now. Breathing deeply several times, Rem touched the horn on her forehead as she calmed herself. In the meantime, Subaru chopped from his land dragon, rushing to stop those attempting to hurt themselves. Hey, cut that out! Your wounds will... Whoa! Yeah. Stay back! One of the confused men slapped his arm aside, scratching his arm without mercy. When the sharp pain sent Subaru into retreat, the man resumed this self-harming behavior, scraping his face enough that it began to bleed. That hurt, but ain't this pretty bad? They might not stop till they're dead. Subaru, you're hurt? It hurts, and I feel like crying a little, but it's nothing. More importantly, everyone will tear themselves apart if we don't do something. Isn't there anything we can do? As Rem rushed over, she had a grim look on her face as she shook her head to his reply. Unfortunately, I do not know how much effect my healing magic would have. This is not simply interfering with the body, but the Odo directly through their gates. Only Master Ferris can deal with such powerful mana contamination. In the first place, how long can he hold up against mental contamination? Besides the two of us, we're pretty much wiped out here. The squad running alongside Subaru and Rem was virtually routed, and the few unharmed souls were trying to stop their comrades from hurting themselves like Subaru had. If Ferris gets contaminated, we're totally done for. What do we do? This was only as far as Subaru could see. He can only despair that it was like that everywhere else, too. Along with Krush and Wilhelm, if Ferris, their pillar of support, were to fall, that would be it for them. it would be difficult to even maintain the fight at all. "Everyone who can move, get the wounded to the great tree. Use whatever force you have to." He heard Crush's voice from the other side of the mist. A series of voices responded, and apparently, Crush had escaped the effect of the mist. She was now conveying how they would deal with that same menace. Immediately after ordering the entire force to attack, she was instantly changing policies. Crush's voice was chagrined, and Subaru, too, felt anger as he vented abuse at the white whale. "Strength-wise, fighting with people wounded is tougher than fighting with the dead. But do monsters even think to do that?" "It seems Master Felix is safe. With him going around healing, the effects of the contamination should at least be diminished. But..." Rem hesitated, but Subaru knew what she was trying to say. With this much damage sustained, Ferris would have his hands completely full. With the manpower split to gather the wounded, that made their fighting strength that much less. And more importantly, there's not enough time. We can't just be defenseless like this until Ferris heals everyone. Worst case, the expeditionary force grouped up together like this, the white whale's mist could swallow it whole. I do not wish to think it is that intelligent, but given it has created this situation, that is optimistic. It's possible it's doing all of this out of instinct, but no, we can't underestimate it either way. Resigning herself to the danger, Crush meant to entrust the wounded expeditionary force members to Ferris. Naturally, it was necessary to do something to buy time so that the white whale did not approach the wounded. They needed to tender an attractive piece of bait to distract it from thoroughly pounding its enemy. Whew. Deeply breathing out, Subaru emptied his lungs. Bringing oxygen out of his body to its limit, he naturally felt stifled inside his chest. His heartbeat slowed, and he knew that its rhythm was growing surer. Subaru spontaneously made a strange smile at how unexpectedly calm he was. He'd always been swept around by circumstances, toyed with by the events before his eyes, and Subaru's heart had reflected his emotions, running wild over and over. So why was it so calm then, on the precipice of his decision? Borrowed or not, courage is courage, I guess. Subaru thumbed his chest and breathed in deeply. He paused once, closed his eyes, and then breathed out and opened his eyes. He turned forward, before Subaru, Rem, riding the land dragon, was looking down at him. What was Subaru going to say? What did he desire? That was what she was waiting to hear. "Rem, stick me with the most dangerous part." "Yes, no matter where it may lead." Without hesitation, Rem accepted Subaru's request, a smile appearing on her face. With that accepted, Subaru ran over to the land dragon. Rem lent her hand, and he virtually flew onto the land dragon's back, straddling it as he headed towards the knights, restraining their comrades struggling on the ground. "Rem and I will draw off the white whale. In the meantime, get them treatment from Ferris. After you hand them to Ferris, anyone who seems all right, hook up with Crush. Draw them off. How in the world will you... like this?" Subaru smiled at the aged soldier, raising a voice of doubt. Drawing his breath and clearing his throat, he announced, "Everyone who can hear this, cover your ears, and if you can't, stay right there." Subaru's full-force voice echoed across the misty plain. Rem listened comfortably to Subaru's loud voice, and then touched her hands to her ears. The nearby knights also rushed to cover their ears. Other Expeditionary Force members within earshot had surely done the same, just as Subaru had asked of them at the briefing before the operation. And then Subaru willingly invoked the taboo. "I've returned by death!" The instant he spoke it, Subaru's heart was wrenched by a rising fear that, in spite of his intentions, his black hands would stretch toward his comrades, toward Rem. But he forced that fear down, raising a voice so that the witch might hear. "You can have my heart, so give me a hand here." Subaru opened his eyes wide, suppressed his weakness, and shouted in his heart, and a moment later, it came to visit. "I love you." It was a frail, delicate voice that seemed to whisper into his ears. However, what was the ardor infused within that made his breast tremble? Unwittingly, tears welled in the corner of his eyes. Subaru's breath caught as he was struck by the urge to chase after the receding voice, to embrace the speaker in that very moment. His entire body was governed by the heat of love, burning white-hot in his mind. "I'm back." After a brief sojourn, Subaru's mind woke to reality. The fervor that had ruled Subaru until the moment before grew distant, and he became unable to remember the deep feelings he'd had until then. But he did feel unease at the fierce pain he supposedly resigned himself to having miraculously failed to arrive. Yet, even so... "Rem, how is it? The witch is sent on me." "You stink!" "That was the idea, but isn't that a bit harsh?" Though not thrilled to receive a black mark from Rem, he'd accomplished his objective. His body shrouded in the witch's miasma, Subaru looked back and raised his voice to the knights all around. "Get away from us right now! Get as close to the big tree as you can and link up with Krush as best as you can manage." Understood. Good fighting. You too." Sending off the knights, Subaru's pat of Rem's shoulder was the signal for the land dragon to start running. At present, Subaru's body was giving off the fresh, lingering scent of the witch, setting aside the contradiction in those words. The scent had to be wafting all around him. The problem was, how much effect would it have on the white whale? With the Uragarums, the effect was enough to cover the entire forest. But how about this time? To be honest, there's no way to measure it, but... when it encountered the white whale in the previous world, the white whale had tenaciously pursued Otto's dragon carriage after Subaru shifted over to it. At the time, he'd said nothing in relation to the witch. If Subaru gave off an even stronger scent than before, he'd ought to be prime bait for the white whale. Just after he had that thought, the land dragon, charging straight ahead, sensed something and turned abruptly on its own judgment, with centrifugal force drawing an out of Subaru as he hastily hugged Rem right before his eyes, seemingly clinging for dear life. "What's... the white whale?" As Rem, pressed against him, shouted, a gargantuan maw suddenly emerged from the side, breaking through the mist. By a hair's breadth, Subaru and Rem diverged from their path and escaped, with the white whale's huge mouth seeming to slide past them a little to the left, biting into the ground, swallowing grass and topsoil whole. Its stony outer hide seemed to be grazed as the demon beast rushed past, and from nearby they heard the sound of its maw biting the ground apart. Then, with a roar, it chased after the pair. Whoa! There was an overwhelming amount of pressure as it chased them from the rear. With the overpowering sense chasing his back that they'd be squished, the land dragon that the shouting Subaru rode earnestly kicked the earth. However, the swimming speed of the pursuing white whale was extraordinary. With an enormous body like a mountain, it swam with such force that it surpassed the wind, closing the distance quickly. Steadily, the maw pressed close, shrinking up the world around it. When the tip of its nose was right at their backs, close enough to bathe them in the raw stench of its breath. Rem! Ahuma! Rem responded with an incantation, sending 3 pillars of ice thrusting out of the ground as one. Her aim was true, punching into the white whale, pursuing the pair from right below it, impaling its belly in an attempt to halt its movements. Yet, it won't stop! The icy spears, each as thick as 100 spears bundled together, were snapped off at the base, giving a high-pitched sound as the ice shattered. The destroyed spears of ice instantly returned to the manor from whence they came, and then the white whale, having lost what was sealing its wounds, bled from them. There was no effect on its movement. That it had been wounded and bled so much seemed only to bring into sharper relief the extent of its endurance. Subaru was aghast all over again at just how high a hurdle bringing down the white whale was. This ain't like with the Irrigarum when it was one-on-one. As Subaru moved farther from the white whale, he raised his middle finger, taunting it. Enraged at the gesture, the white whale's roar thundered across the plains, but from the side of its torso. Rah! Wilhelm intervened, flying with a vertical slash. Driving his blade in, Wilhelm ran up the white whale's flank. As Wilhelm cut through the bloody mist, the kitten's siblings appeared alongside, straddling their ligers and looking at each other's faces. Big sis, join with me! Let's do this, hetero! As the ligers crossed, Mimi and hetero leaped off and joined hands. The two stood before the gaping wound Wilhelm had carved as they yelled, Ha! The pair's voices overlapped. The sound waves broadened with incredibly destructive might. The shock wave coursed in through the open wound, making every injury on the white whale's body bleed once more. The enormous body shuddered, and the white whale's altitude dropped precipitously against its will. The white whale groaned in agony, raising its voice as it endured the pain, and barely managed to avoid crashing as the twins, riding their ligers, leaped up its back. Trump card complete! Captain, please! Oh yeah, leave it to me. If the runts are trying hard, then I've got it too. In place of the landing twins, a large liger climbed onto the white whale from the tail end. Swinging his cleaver upward, Ricardo went around smacking the countless mouths that spawned mist. Wilhelm did the same, jamming slashes into the annoying mouths, silencing them one by one. But the white whale didn't let them smash its means of attack without a response. From the mouths, seemingly infinite, no matter how many they smashed, a literal barrage of annihilating mist spewed out. Ricardo, relying on his liger's mobility, and Wilhelm, pushing his body past normal human limits, continued to dodge that mist some more. The Expeditionary Force and the Iron Fangs had both reorganized, and they began firing magic crystal cannons once more to assist Wilhelm and Ricardo in their precarious position. With the white whale's own attacks unable to hit, and apparently losing patience from the increasing damage from the pesky attackers, it twisted its massive body, opening its mouth fully to spread mist far and wide. Rem! Faster than Subaru could shout, Rem had their land dragon leap up into the white whale's nose. The approach of Subaru, with the scent of the witch wafting around him, made the white whale reflexively stare at them, throwing off its concentration. It was looking to send them flying when a splash interrupted that plan. That's very rude of you. Here I am after nothing but your head for 14 years, and you look away. With a stab, Wilhelm thrust deep into the white whale's brow, his movements halting and his blade sank into the skull. But the aged swordsman instantly abandoned his third sword, leaping in and kicking full force the hilt of the sword he had let go of, and withdrew his fourth and fifth swords, both blades dancing wildly across the white whale's back. Also atop the white whale's back, Ricardo linked up with Wilhelm, opening his large mouth and laughing. "This is getting fun. It's tougher than I thought, but it's not all that strong now, is it?" "No, this response is a little too weak." Ricardo exulted. Wilhelm knitted his brows and murmured. Biting his lip, Wilhelm sliced into the white whale's tail fin as he said, "I cannot easily believe my wife, the sword saint, could be defeated by this level of demon beast, even considering that it did not take the initiative and split us apart with mist at the beginning." As Wilhelm swung his blades, his thought process was interrupted by the white whale whirling its body about. "Do what?" The demon beast's action, differing from all those before it, sent the white whale's head suddenly rising up, with the force sending Ricardo and his liger flying off. Then Wilhelm, still atop the white whale, said, "It'll take one more before I take my leave." With the demon beast wriggling its body as it swam in the air, Wilhelm ran down it with nimble movements. The white whale's body was climbing, with Wilhelm leaping down in the opposite direction. Finally adjusting his center of gravity and using the stabs of his blades to control his posture by force, the highly experienced old swordsman exercised his body to the fullest, chopping off at the base one of the dorsal fins at the extreme edges of the enormous body. Listening to the white whale scream, Wilhelm rode the fin he'd sent flying into the ground below. Normally, you would think a fall from such great altitude would result in instant death, but the soles of Wilhelm's feet kicked off the fin just before impact, and his land dragon caught him, softening the blow. "Wilhelm!" Suru tried to make sure he was all right, but Wilhelm did not respond, for his eyes were on the white whale, still rapidly ascending. Drawn in, Suru looked up, and his vision was caught by the white whale's tail as it swam in the sky above. Blood dripped from the fin that had been sliced off, pouring downward with violent force. The grassy plain was dyed scarlet, and Wilhelm was bathed in red rain, his will to fight undiminished. Suru didn't think the white whale was going to just turn tail and run either, but the demon beast's goal in heading up into the sky was unclear. The Iron Fangs and the expeditionary force uneasily looked up at the sky, and Suru grew concerned for the wounded gathered at the roots of the great tree. "It's coming." Wilhelm made a small murmur as he turned his gaze upward. Seeing the aged swordsman narrow his eyes and return both hands to his sword hilts put everyone on guard. And then, as they held their breaths, they regretted it. Too late, they knew they should have deployed instantly without waiting for the white whale, floating above their heads, to act. "Mist! Incoming!" Subaru shouted as loudly as he could. Brem made the land dragon whirl about and move away from the front. The land dragons and ligers all around them started running all at once, but there was no longer any leeway for Subaru to raise his head and see if others were safe. Billowing, annihilating mist came falling to earth with such force that it seemed to blot out the sky. The mist was like the clouds themselves were falling. There was no way to avoid it save escaping the area. Sheltering behind rocks or trees was a meaningless resistance before destruction that would swallow all obstacles whole. There was nothing they could do but start running and pray that they were in time. Too afraid to look, Subaru merely felt the oppression of the soundless apocalypse hurtling from above. He earnestly squatted against the land dragon's back, lowering its posture as far as they could as they ran. "We got through?" Having apparently slipped out from under the thick mist and entered a clearer area, Subaru turned his head around and looked back. There were several figures on the ground behind them that hadn't made it out in time, swallowed up as the mist passed down upon them. The expressions of fear and anger chiseled on the human beings' faces. They earnestly fled, but they were engulfed by the mist from the head down and vanished. The land dragons were obliterated with them. With the mist falling and scattering to the ground, no trace of their destruction remained. Not even their names would remain in anyone's memories. None save Subaru, the only one who would remember their deaths. Ah. There were little moans in front of Subaru from distant figures scattered about the mists. It was clear that their numbers had greatly diminished since they had regrouped. That, of course, went for the Expeditionary Force's knights, but the Iron Fangs had not escaped unscathed either. If we at least have our big guns, thought Subaru, shifting his gaze. Well, he spotted Wilhelm, barely keeping one hand on the land dragon's back as he escaped the mist's area of effect. It was when Subaru called out to him from behind that he realized that from the other side of the dense mist, the demon beast was chasing Wilhelm, opening its huge mouth. Run! Wilhelm noticed the impending menace at the back at about the same time Subaru shouted, but both came too late for him to react in time. Approaching, without a sound, the maw of the white whale swallowed the ground, the land dragon, and Wilhelm whole. Scraping the ground, everything on the surface around Wilhelm was gouged out, entering the white whale's mouth. Ah! Faced with the shock of that spectacle, it was not only Subaru who shouted, but Rem as well. Knowing the grudge the old man bore, the sense of loss was all that much greater. More importantly, losing their main fighting strength would make their situation most dire. But... Oh no, you don't! This time, someone else raised his voice from right beside them. Before they could react, a lagger came in from the side, bumping their land dragon and sending Subaru and Rem flying. Whoa! Tumbling from the staggered land dragon, Subaru grimaced from the pain of getting smacked all over. From the voice, he knew that it was Ricardo had committed the sudden act of violence. Before he could ask what the big idea was. Ugh! Subaru gasped as he saw crimson flowers bloom before his eyes. Huh? The liger was sliced apart, pieces of its flesh sent flying as its corpse cruelly rolled onto the grassland. The large-statured beast man, who should have been straddling it, had vanished, with a vast pool of fresh blood left behind in his place. The white whale swam at a low altitude, swaying its enormous body and waving the tail that was covered in Ricardo's blood. He shielded us? Then what happened to Ricardo? There were various questions coming to mind, but Subaru set them aside when he realized something he could not ignore. For him was the white whale, which had mowed down Ricardo with its tail. And... no way. When he looked back, he saw the white whale that swallowed Wilhelm and the ground around him beginning to bite down. In front, behind, and up above, he saw yet another whale-shaped figure high in the sky, scattering mist all around. The infinite mouths of the three white whales laughed together, drawing out the despair of men. Bit by bit, Subaru once again felt hope being blotted out, by nightmare.